All right. Hey, welcome to ArtNomad. In this episode, we are wandering with lights that are little and dim because sometimes you see a lot more when the shadows are long and the light is low. I'm your host, Eric, and this week's theme is dark. My guest is New York artist Reka Nyari. From a young age, she has been attracted to the dark and disturbing. If she's ever in a city, she looks up torture museums. I found out that there are a lot of torture museums, and I think I'll have to start to visit a couple as well. Now, Reka's work captures stories of the skin. She explores the good, the bad, and sometimes the very dark. She almost always photographs against a black background while draining the color from her subject's tattoos. Reka has been photographing mostly women, and I asked her why, and she said she wants to showcase them in their legitimate position as gods and creators. Now, before we dive into that interesting topic, I want to take a little detour and head us into the 1500s for a tale of long, dark shadows where we find creativity and the heart of a young female artist who refused to follow the rules. This is the story of the Dark Nun. Dressed in all black and living in the shadows of others, the dark nun taught herself how to paint in her convent's hidden corners. And this was at a time when young women were not allowed to train or to be educated in any way. But she managed to do it, and she did it very well. And in 1569, the dark nun, whose name is Platilla Nelli, painted the Last Supper in the dining hall of her convent in Florence. Now, this painting stretched out to be 21 feet long, which at that time was at a ginormous scale. And it's really amazing because to paint something that large, you usually need to be trained extensively in that technique. But she wasn't. She figured it out on her own. In fact, the well-trained masters of the Renaissance struggled when it came to the scale of that size. Botticelli just flat out couldn't do it. Raphael, well, he always had his assistants do the scaling. And Michelangelo flat out refused. He just hated it. But Nelly did it on her own, and she did a great job. I mean, if you take her Last Supper and you place it up against the other Last Suppers, it holds its own very well. Da Vinci's, hers, I like hers. It's fantastic. I did a Google search for the Last Supper of paintings done during the Renaissance, and I got 4 results back, and they were all male. Nelly was gone from the list, so shame on you, Google. I also did the same thing with ChatGPT, and I got 9 names back, but again, they were all male. Claude, 8 names, all male. So the Dark Nun was simply invisible. So after this podcast, take a look at the Last Supper. It's a great painting, and if you can show it to someone young, that would be great. And if you're in Florence, Italy, stop by and see it in person. It's at the Museum of Santa Maria Novella, and it would be impressive to see in person. It's a masterpiece painted by a master who lived her life in the shadows, but somehow she managed to paint the lights out of everyone around her. So thank you, Platilla Nelli, to great painting. Now let's get into our candlelight interview with Reka Nyari. Reka Nyari, welcome to ArtNomad. It's good to have you.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
It's interesting because you and I met, I think I was trying to do the math the other day, about 12 years ago, I think it was, or this summer it'll be 12 years. And we met on a small island called Bora Bora.
Yes. So magical.
We were in Bora Bora for a wedding,
yes.
and then we never saw each other again, and we went our separate ways. And then I moved back to New York, and lo and behold, our children are in the same school,
Crazy.
So we bumped into each other. Anyway, it's great to be reconnected.
Yes, I'm so glad.
I pick a theme for each one of these podcasts. It usually comes from your creative DNA, and when I research you or talk with you about it, come up with a theme, and the theme is dark.
Yes.
And we'll get into that quite a bit, but we decided also there's nothing wrong with the lighting here. We decided to do this podcast via candlelight. By the way, these two candles here, these are my grandmother's like orbs, so they're quite special. So
Amazing.
Anyway,
they traveled with you.
So grandma's here tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, so darkness, you've always been attracted to sort of the dark and the disturbing since we were quite young, and that fascinated me. And I think your work also dives into the dark side, kind of thematically, psychologically, and we can get into that as well. But I wanted to start by asking you, when did you find that attraction to the darkness?
I don't know if it's because I'm from Finland. They do say that Finnish people have this like melancholic way of looking at the world, and it's dark, in the winter it's dark, all day, and the sun doesn't come out, and you're kind of like drawn to this kind of darkness. But I definitely have that. And then I think my brother just brought in all kinds of horror movies and books since I was little, and he was 4 years older than me, so I would like sneak in and probably pick up all these books that were probably a little bit too scary for like an 8-year-old or 9-year-old kid. So I was like binging Stephen King and all these like horror things, and I don't know, I just really liked it always, so it stayed with me. So I definitely really like horror stuff, and even with art or things like that, I always like to look at things that make me feel something. I'm not just always drawn to like happiness and flowers and sunshine. I kind of like the melancholy and darkness of the human mind as well. I think it's really interesting.
And did you get into art through that love of kind of darkness and disturbing things?
No, I don't think so. I mean, my parents tell me that I could, I was painting before I could walk. So, I was painting at 2 or 3 years old. It was just always my happy place. So I've always been creating. And, there are these old books from when I was like 6 years old where you would write down what you want to be. And I was always writing down, I want to either be a artist or a rock star, and I can't sing. So I don't know. I just always loved art.
Do you play a musical instrument?
I do. I play the violin, and I used to also play the piano. So I was quite heavily invested in that my whole childhood, but loved art more than the music.
Yeah. That's
or
great.
Making music. I love music, but making music is secondary to making art for me.
Yeah. When you go back, did you have a love for the macabre content? That the art and literature that had themes of like death and decay or the grotesque, like, was that attractive to you?
Yeah, definitely.
Did you have someone who really was who stood out in those times?
Oh my gosh, there is. I actually was meant to look it up. There was this, I think, a German artist, and he had this really disturbing paintings of children and horror stuff, and I was just really always interested in that when I was a kid. Even my first photos, I would make my poor little brother, who was 2 years younger than me, I would like pose him in these like poses that were really disturbing with like fruit, but always like, just off kilter, not happy, like disturbing. And I think I would give him my chocolate and my candy, and I would just make him pose for me. Poor guy, traumatized.
You bribed him for your disturbing painting.
Yeah, absolutely. But I always even loved like European cinema, Roman Polanski. I don't really support him anymore, but back in those days, Blue Velvet, one of those other movies I loved. Kind of dark and interesting and edgy movies always inspired me as well.
And a bit abstract too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess one of the first that I liked was Geiger.
Oh yes, absolutely. I love him. Yeah.
H.R. Geiger. I remember coming across his books and just going like, what? It was so disturbing, but also in a way quite sensual, disturbing and sensual at the same time.
So beautifully designed.
Like you're attracted to it, but you're also repulsed by it at the same time. He did the aliens design that I always thought was really way ahead of its time, and really, really fun stuff. Getting into your work, just so the audience is aware, you do you do quite a bit of nude portraiture. You shoot a lot of full body tattooed individuals. I guess you call them suits.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, tattoo suits or full body ink.
And I see mostly women in those that you shoot. And when I look at your work, there's like a dreamy beauty to it at first glance. But then if I stay there and I study it a bit more, it starts to grow these like sharp edges, and then it starts
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
much more complicated. And then it has that kind of, in my mind, this sort of duality to it, where there's like you start to see this really fragile vulnerability in the work, but then you also get this strong strong empowerment, like this like really powerful, but yet also vulnerable. And it's you're kind of tugging on those two ends. And and sometimes I see the vulnerability that pulls out a sharp edge, and sometimes I see the beauty that's also really powerful. And it's just there's a
Oh,
lot going on there. And
thanks.
i'm
That's
just i'm
that's
just curious your thoughts on it.
thanks. That's really such a beautiful way of describing my work, and it's a lot of things I want to come across in the photos as well, because they're really. So I shoot mostly women. I do have shot men as well, but I think it's just having a full bodysuit of tattoos is a lot more rare for women and also a lot
Mm,
more judged. I think it's a lot more accepted. I have so many friends, so many men that are fully tattooed, and it's a lot more controversial and risky for women. I still think in this world to have these tattoos. So I get to know about their life story, and the stories behind their tattoos. And a lot of times there's also a lot of darkness in there. There's a lot of, I went dark, sorry.
yeah,
There's a
of
lot of
course.
darkness in there. There's a lot of narrative and kind of conquest of one's troubles or trauma through sometimes through the whole process of tattooing, which is very painful. But there's a lot of strength there too. It's such a
Mm.
getting your full body tattooed is such a painful kind of a process, expensive, painful, hard on your body, hard on your mind. So I feel like each one of the people that I shoot are kind of warriors, and they each have a very interesting reason behind getting a full body suit as well that I want to tell.
Yeah, I mean they're pretty epic. I also noticed that a lot of the tattoos are in full color, but you shoot them and then you push it to black and white, or you shoot it in black and white. I'm not sure which way you
I
do it.
shoot it in color. I shoot everything in color. Just sometimes I wanted to release some of the photos in color. But I tend to think making them black and white just makes it more timeless. You know, could have been shot 100 years ago or now
Mm,
or in the future. I feel like a lot of times color treatment in a way ages a photograph. And
uh,
I think it also really makes it so the composition, this just becomes so much more that the tattoos. It's not about the color. It doesn't like distract your eye so much. So there's something really, I just love black and white photography.
and it kind of pulled me one step closer to the dark theme as well, because it's always shot in black, and then you drain the color from the photos in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
and then it's black. It's black ink for the most part on the body, and
Yeah.
and I thought that was quite interesting, but striking at the same time. And then you also, in addition to pulling the color, you poke a lot of holes in the artwork. And I'm curious.
Yes.
We talked about this briefly. I went to your last opening, but I'm
Yeah.
curious if you could just explain the reasoning behind the holes that you create.
Yeah, I've been working with this fine art paper that's so I do archival pigment prints and they're very big and it's you have to always handle them so carefully, white glove handling. And if you touch the prints, you leave a fingerprint. And, now for 10 years, I've been like, babying these prints. And in a way, I almost felt like the paper, I wanted to make the paper more like skin and give it scars and give it texture and give it life rather than making it so precious and protected. I love the idea of scars. I also was really inspired by some of the tribes that do scarification on the skin. So there's like texture in it.
Hmm.
And in a way, also inspired by like Braille and the language for the blind that is textured on paper. So yeah, I started using tattoo needles and different kind of puncture tools and creating texture on the paper. So it kind of gives the pieces, it makes them one of a kind, but it also, I feel like, gives them a whole different dimension, which I love. And I also realized I missed working on the pieces. I used to be a painter before I did photography. And I missed that physical process that I had with each one of my works instead of just, having the photo shoot and then, editing and then printing. And I wouldn't do anything with the prints. They would just go straight to framing. This way I get like hours and weeks with each piece. I make them unique. I get to kind of live with the work. Yeah. And I love kind of the imperfections, on the paper as well. So, it's kind of like tattooing. Yeah, no, it's funny when I was preparing for the last show, it's like my fingers start bleeding. I'm like, my body's changing. I'm gaining muscle on one side of my body. I'm like having to do yoga 2 hours a day to like get through my my artistic process.
You wrote something, and I quote, I wanted to showcase women in their legitimate position as gods and creators. And I
Yeah.
thought that was I just thought it was really amazing and beautiful.
Well, there's a beautiful quote that I forgot who said it, but it's just the whole world is just women and their children. Um, and, it's true. Every single person here has come from a woman, and women are the ultimate creators, right? And I think we've been fed up this lie that, God is a man. And I feel like we should, look back and see, past a few thousand years of patriarchy, viewing things more consciously and, respecting women and respecting our moms. And I think the world would be a lot better place. But yeah, I feel like women are the creators and the gods.
Yeah, I love that quote. The world is what is it? Mothers and their children.
Well, yeah, yeah,
The whole world,
exactly.
mothers and their
Yeah,
children. Yeah,
exactly.
that's great.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I did notice that all of your models are rather young and extremely beautiful. And is there a reason to, I guess, because to me a lot of your work breaks down stereotypes, but then you have um, this kind of very beautiful female figure, always in great shape. I would imagine very beautiful and elegant older women with aged bodies.
Yeah.
That could be that. I'm just your thought process on that. Is there a
No, that's
logic
a
to
good
that?
question. I think it's just maybe people that volunteered or wanted to be part of the project. They, I guess, tended to be younger and maybe more comfortable posing naked in front of the camera. It's actually quite limited. There's not that many women that I come across to even in social media and Instagram that are
Hmm.
so tattooed and also have a very interesting story and are interested in, telling that. So, I definitely would love to shoot older women and women of all sizes and ages for the project. I actually
Yeah,
was researching also different tribes from around the world that a lot of them are older women that are tattooed. So that's hopefully coming in the next year, but
it's interesting.
definitely,
Yeah,
definitely
tribal
something I'm
tribal
interested in.
tattoos. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
You you also compare the tattoos to the ancient Japanese art of
Yeah.
kintsuku,
Kintsuroi.
right?
Kintsuroi. Yeah.
I had to look that up, but I think it's very beautiful. This the replacement of broken pottery, the putting back together of broken objects to make them even more beautiful. And
Absolutely.
and I just your thoughts on like the connection of the tattoo to that and how you make that bridge.
I mean, some of the subjects I've shot, they have, extensive scarring on their body. They could have been in an accident. They could have had trauma on their body that they're kind of covering up with the tattoos partially. So it's not necessarily that you're covering up in a way, but you're taking your scars, your broken limbs, your broken body, and you're putting it together and making it more beautiful, kind of with the help of the tattoos and kind of giving yourself new life in a similar way.
Hmm.
Um, there's actually also a beautiful quote by Rumi, and it says, "Wound is where the light enters." And I find that very similar. Like some of the most interesting people that I know have had really hard lives, and kind of gives you character in a similar way. So I think a lot of times scars and tattoos and marks on your body, tell a life like well lived and make you more interesting.
Definitely. It's a nice analogy.
Yeah.
And when we talked before, I asked you for some influences of art and painting, and you brought up Caravaggio, and you
Yeah.
brought up Judith beheading Holofernes,
Yeah.
and I remember that painting when I was studying in college, and I remembered it mainly because I think most of the religious depictions of Judas beheading is always in the aftermath of it, like when they're holding up the head, like it's done. But this one I always remember because it was in the act
Yes.
of the cutting. And I'm
Yeah.
and I'm just curious why you brought it up as one of your
It,
favorite
I just always,
paintings.
I was thinking of all these paintings that made an impact on me when I was an art student. It was just one of those paintings that I always gravitated towards that, I just loved the style. It was just so interesting and rich and had like so much emotion, I guess. It wasn't a boring pastoral, it wasn't a Monet of, it's
Right.
always more drawn towards, I
Well,
guess,
it's
dark.
it's
Yeah.
definitely dark. Yeah, it's definitely dark.
Yeah.
Um, just for the
Yeah.
just for the audience, even though we videotape this, and I'll probably be showing that painting right now. But a quick description of the painting. It's on a really dark background, kind of like the work you do, and then there's like a spotlight shine on these three subjects. And Judith is there, and she's got the very heavy sword, and she's cutting off the general. I think Holofernes is the way you pronounce his name, but cutting off his head, and he's kind of in shock, like he just kind of woke up. And Judith is, I like her the best in all of this. After you mentioned it, I went back and I looked at it, and like she like it's beautiful in the way she's doing this for the sort of the good of the people, but she's kind of repulsed by it. Like she's standing back at like arm's length. And she's like, I don't really want to do this, and I'm a little unsure about it. She's dressed in white, and she's pure, and so she's doing this deed. After seducing him into her chambers, she cuts off his head. And then you have the maid there, and the maid is all knowing and has gone through a lot, and is on her shoulder, almost whispering, like, you can finish this. You can finish him off. Do it. Anyway, it's a great
It's a
painting.
lot of girl power in that
Yeah,
painting.
definitely a lot of girl power in that. It's strength, and I get, yeah, I feel like that's a very fitting painting for you
Yeah,
to be inspired by. And
absolutely.
but yeah, I thought Caravaggio himself is also rather a dark character.
Yeah.
That guy was a bit crazy. I think he actually stabbed someone in the groin and
Really.
had to be in exile or something. like he,
I have to
like
look
he
up
was
his
he was
story.
crazy. Like Caravaggio was dark. That guy was dark for sure.
Yeah. I guess a lot of artists, that's the just kind of the curse of artists.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I remember learning in school, like all these great painters would paint biblical scenes, and I was always like, well, why won't they just paint like these, like there's so much to paint, like why would like five great painters paint the same biblical scene? Because there's a lot of, you know the beheading of Judith or the Last Suppers, there's a lot of people who
Yeah.
paint those biblical scenes, and I found out in school, if I hope I'm getting this right, um
Yeah.
but back then the church had the
That's
money.
what I was thinking. They were commissioning the artist.
And
That's where
they
the
were
money came
they
from.
were they were definitely commissioning it. So biblical stories were like the blockbuster hits of the day. That
Absolutely.
was the
Or then you
content.
had, or the rich
Like,
merchant's wife, the portraits of the
yeah,
family,
exactly.
or exactly, or the church scenes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, interesting times. But I'm glad you brought me back to that painting. It was good to relook at it and remember
Yeah.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
so now we've reached our first break. You actually
Cool.
influenced this commercial break. All right. This podcast is brought to you by the Do It in the Dark at Home Vasectomy Kit. That's right. Say goodbye, doctor, and hello, simple. In fact, it's so simple, you can do it in the dark with your own two hands. Just snip, clip, and voila, no more drip. This procedure is now fun. And when done, there will be no more little ones on the run. So do it in the dark and then share it with others so they can see the light. That's my commercial.
That's great. Can we get that into reality?
You said, I want a commercial about an at-home vasectomy kit. So I did it.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. We're now jumping in to one of our P's. So I have these different P's in my podcast, and I'm experimenting with different ones. This one I call art.
Okay.
And the idea is that we start to make art together.
Okay.
I want to try for the people listening. I want to try to create what your darkness is, what's inside your head. And so I will I'll have you close your eyes, and then I'll walk you through something with your eyes closed, and then you tell me what you see, like what the darkness is. That's the idea.
Okay.
And then we see what happens. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to have you close your eyes. Now, put yourself outside in a dark place. It's nighttime. Okay. And then in the night, you see a very simple building, and there's a single door to that building. Dark, but you manage to open the door, and you walk through the door, and then you close it. And the room is equally dark. But after your eyes adjust, you start to make out a few things. Now, what do you see in this dark room?
I see a coffin.
Okay. And is the coffin open or closed?
It's closed.
Okay. Is there anything else in the room?
No, it's kind of those old-fashioned crypts. One of those.
Crypt. It's like concrete.
Yeah, concrete. Yeah, exactly. With just like a simple window where moonlight is coming from above.
Okay, now I want the room to get even darker and to feel darker. So what are you going to do to make that so?
The moon is going to go behind a cloud.
Are there other elements that enter the room?
Spiders.
A character walks in the door behind you. Who is this character and what do they look like?
It's the gravedigger.
The gravedigger.
Yeah, they've heard some noise and commotion, and they're going to call the cops on me for robbing the grave.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're angry.
Yeah.
Do they say anything to you?
They're probably like, "Hey, what are you doing here? This is Roosevelt's grave, and it's off limits."
Okay, that's great. Then, all
Yeah.
right, you walk over to the wall to get away from this person, and on the wall there's a shelf, and there's something hanging on the wall. What's hanging on the wall, and what's on the shelf?
It's an urn. It's an urn with the dead person inside, and
Okay.
what's hanging on the shelf is probably their name and the date of death.
Great. Okay. The character comes over and steps on your foot, and you look down at this grave digger's shoes. What do you see?
I see like a dirty big shoe and his laces are open.
Now you suddenly have to get away, and you want the darkness to end. What do you do to end that darkness?
I just like punch him and like run out of the door. The moonlight is right there, and I just sprint.
The moon's back.
Yeah. Yeah, I just sprint out. But not before I took the plaque that was hanging on the wall as a memento.
I love it. There you go. That's our start.
Yeah.
Our start's
I'm
nice.
sure. I'm
It's
sure.
nice to get into your head and see where the darkness is.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think darkness is scary, it's like, or graveyards or things like that. So it's not necessarily horror that comes up. It's more like, hey, there's a mouse, or there's like, a fox in the woods, and,
Right.
I'll run with them and like, collect some berries and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, this is what we're gonna do and jump back into some questions. As a child, were you a strange kid?
Yeah, I was probably a little bit strange for sure.
Hmm.
I was
Do
definitely
you
not a popular kid.
do you think that experience informed the work you're doing today?
Yeah, it probably did. I felt like um having a little bit of a harder life kind of gives you a backbone and character, and also makes me more sympathetic, I guess, towards people that are maybe more at disadvantage or are teased, or having that experience probably makes you more empathetic towards others.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I'm sure it all affected me quite a bit. I also grew up I was kind of the only foreign kid in Finland, where in the 80s everybody was blonde and blue-eyed, and I grew up with a Hungarian dad, and people used to call me Gypsy, and
Oh,
I
really?
felt like I feel like I went through kind of, which is so weird because in New York it's such a melting pot, but I dealt with, I guess, racism, or I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's the right word, but Finland is so different now and it's so multicultural, but in 80s it wasn't like that. So definitely I feel like it gave me an experience of how it could feel like, just being discriminated against.
Got it. Got it. As far as your taste in dark content,
Yeah.
you like to visit museums of torture. Can you please tell me why you like to go visit museums of torture?
I really like seeing the torture devices that were used. And I don't know why. I just feel, as an artist, I feel so much, and I like to feel these things. I don't know. And I just like to feel the empathy, and just kind of where humanity has been, and kind of even think of the stories of these people that maybe were tortured, or, you know, um, I'm a bit of a history buff, so I was reading history of Black Death and plague and diseases, and torture, and I'm just super curious about all those things. I don't know why, but I guess it's my morbid fascination with like death, and
Yeah,
yeah, I just find it really interesting.
I think too that I mean there's a bit of torture that goes on with tattooing your entire body.
Yeah,
I
but I
know
guess it's voluntary. That's voluntary torture.
exactly. There's a little difference there.
Yeah,
You can
yeah.
pace yourself.
No, absolutely.
Okay, there are many dark sides to the art world, and I wanted to this. There are so many to discuss. One that might be interesting is the dark side of blockchain art, and
Yeah.
I was curious if you've explored any of that as a maker or even a buyer.
I did get into it a bit, and I had a few exhibitions. I actually had a museum exhibition in China. I think it was one of the biggest, or the first museum exhibitions featuring NFTs, and one in Milan. And I spoke about them, and I had an NFT auctioned off. I think it was, how much was it? Like $200,000 for charity.
That's
But
great.
I think it was one of those things that I was into a little bit, but it was kind of a fad. Like I'm more always interested. I'm not so interested in digital art for me. I know that there's a lot of amazing artists that their work, like Rafik Anadol, his work lives in this large scale format, digital pieces that are just incredible. But I don't necessarily think it's the right medium for the work that I'm doing
Hmm.
right now. I'm not against incorporating videos also that come together with some of my exhibitions that explain my work and explain the stories behind the woman. But I'm not necessarily a video artist, and I don't think NFTs are necessarily the right medium just for my pieces. And I personally, if I buy art, I would much rather buy a piece that lives in my house that I live with,
Mm-hmm.
than like a digital work for me. But
That's an
at the
excellent.
same
Yeah.
time, I know that there are artists that do amazing stuff too. So I respect it, and there are different types of collectors too. So I don't have anything against it. I do feel like it was kind of such a big scheme with those the apes that were selling for like millions of dollars. There's like
Exactly.
it's not really value that you could justify, besides it's being like a collector fad or something like that.
It is evolution, and it's interesting to follow it and see where it goes. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think there's much friction. I think the art world kind of really embraced it for a little bit, but then really kind of got away from it. And I don't think it's, in all the art fairs, I don't think it's very much represented at all these days.
Yeah. All right. For artists that might be struggling, what's one habit that made the biggest difference in your creativity?
I think, especially when I was starting out, but well, one is just doing the work. You have an idea, you know, keep creating, keep doing work, even though a lot of artists will have another job, especially in the beginning, because you have to support yourself. And
Hmm.
not all of us have like a support system or a way of, creating art and not working. So it can be exhausting. You're working a full-time job. You may have kids and you don't have time. So first of all, you have to make time for your creative practice. And second is you have to show it to people. So you have to put it out there. So at this, day and age, there are online, back in the day when I started, I was posting on Flickr all the time. And Adobe has, I forget what it's called. Adobe has a platform where you can post your work. And there are different kinds of, ways of having people see your art, giving you comments, maybe having, posting on Instagram. Social media is so important these days, which sucks because as an artist, you don't have to only create the work, but you have to put it out there. You have to make videos. You have to make, posts that are engaging. You have to be in front of the camera. It's really annoying, but it really can be helpful in getting your work seen and getting buyers and getting galleries and
Hmm.
also getting good feedback and seeing, sometimes you need to step back from your work and, see, how the response is, how you like it, how the work kind of lives in the world too. So I guess making the work and then just putting it out there and not being discouraged. Also, just I think a lot of artists, they give up. You don't, if you don't have a response. But sometimes it takes years. It really
Is
takes
there,
years.
yeah, I know it does. Just you mentioned social media. Is there, would you say there's a dark side to the need to have social media as an ingredient as an
I'm
artist?
sure, yeah, I'm sure there is. I mean, I'm so, I was posting a lot more before, but last few years my account has been just shadow banned because I have implied nudity. So I'm like, I
Oh,
kind of stopped posting because nobody was seeing my work for a
interesting.
while. But even though there's no real nudity, it's just maybe there is like nudity
Right.
in the shadows.
In the darkness. In the
In the
darkness is
darkness there's
nudity.
there is a blurry boob in the darkness. Oh my goodness. But I think it can be, the darkness is there, like it can be really exhausting for you to have to be, active on social media because a lot of artists don't have that, in them. You like to create, but you don't necessarily want to be in front of the camera and, make these catchy videos and know what's trending. And, it's just exhausting to have to wear all those hats.
True. The other thing I think about when about it, and this hasn't happened to me, but um, I feel like people put filters on their work,
Mm,
whereas an artist probably shouldn't filter their work, and they should be able to say what they want to say. And the artist has always been the voice of the resistance or the
100%.
the unspeakable, and like and
Yeah,
bringing awareness to a society. But I feel like if
absolutely.
people do that on social media,
Or you get banned. Yeah.
yeah, there's a fear of being
Yeah.
canceled in this cancel culture, and so then you're like, okay, well maybe I won't be as like extreme as I want to be. I have to tailor this content to be,
No, for
within
sure.
society's norms, but then that's not the role of the artist.
No, I
And
mean, it's
so,
even what I said, nudity is censored, and I'm not
right.
talking about pornography. I'm just saying, artistic nudity or implied nudity is censored, or, any thoughts or ideas or any subject matter that could be uncomfortable. And I think art is supposed to sometimes make you feel uncomfortable, right? And we're supposed to make people think and
Yeah.
it's a commentary on the world situation and politics in so many ways. So, yeah, I think it definitely sucks that that's the case. And I'm actually surprised. Even I feel like right now there's not enough street art or public art that raising questions or is protesting situations that are happening around the world. And I don't know why. Maybe it's fear or censorship.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. You were a part of Pussyverse. For people that aren't familiar with it, it was like a nationwide public art exhibition that was done on billboards around US cities, right? And they
Yeah,
picked
yeah.
select artists, and you were one of those selected artists
Yeah, I
to
think
be.
mine was, am I right? It was in Las Vegas. And it was a breastfeeding picture of a tattooed woman, Leia, who was breastfeeding her baby. And it's just very
Right.
natural, but it was funny. They couldn't post it in, it was all over the US. And it's like they couldn't do Alabama, they couldn't do Georgia, they couldn't do anywhere. It just
Oh,
got completely
wow.
banned.
They had to go to
Um,
Vegas for you.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it's kind of crazy.
I always think it's interesting that there's such an outcry over a breastfeeding
Gosh, it's
baby
so
and
ridiculous.
mother, and then you see what else people get away with.
Oh my gosh. I mean, breasts were meant for breastfeeding. It's so
It's so
crazy.
crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into another P in the pod. So this one, it's called Pikachu.
Pikachu. Pikachu.
Not to be confused with Pikachu, which we were talking. Speaking of Pikachu, the Pokemon company just prints money. Like it is insane. But anyway, this one's Peek
Yeah.
at You,
Gotcha.
and give the listeners a bit of an insight into your studio, and just take people inside your creative workspace.
Yeah. Well, my studio actually modifies itself quite a bit depending on what I'm doing. So I do shoot my shoots at my studio and then I transform it into, my photo studio. I have my props there. My backdrops and all that stuff. And then when I'm actually working on the prints myself, I lay out these big tables. I have big work tables. I have a light table that I actually designed with my husband so I can see the prints and puncture them from underneath. This year, because I did this whole series with dried flowers, I had just thousands of dried flowers laid out that I'm working with on these tables with the prints. And it's a big mess. So it's a very organic workspace. I hate putting things away. I kind of love working on pieces, stepping away from them, coming back. I don't like spending time on cleaning or organizing. I kind of organize a little bit, but I don't like putting things away when I'm in the creative flow. So I usually do really long days. I like immerse myself in the work. I step back and then I go back sometimes. But yeah, it's kind of my workspace is very different depending on what I'm working on. And I have a loft in Soho, so in New York, and I just kind of it's a very transformative big space, which is I'm very blessed to have. So um
Is it a live workspace or is it
yeah,
just work? It's
yeah,
live
it's a
work.
live workspace.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's great because I can set it up and I like to work in really big scale, so I can kind of work on these prints and yeah, puncture them and paint on them and cut them or sew on them or whatever else I'm doing next. Or also I have big flower presses that I have like, pressing flowers at all times as well. And
Is that
yeah.
like the flower press? How does that work? Is that a machine of some sort? Or like I used
No,
to put them in between books.
yeah, I started by I have lots of huge art books. So I started, I have also a place upstate and this garden and I started collecting all these herbs and leaves and flowers there and just fusing them, pressing them into books. But then it was like 200 books were full of flowers. So then it's just you can use blotting paper. So I have like blotting paper that I have in between big pieces of wood. And just it's heavy weights and they're just piled on top of each other.
Oh, I
And then
see.
I just it's a few weeks and then I transition them out and then kind of organize them by color and type. So it's also a process.
The flowers, I noticed them in the show that I went to see. How do you take the dry flowers and attach them to the
Yeah, so
photographs?
there's this archival botanical glue that there's this whole thing of flower artists that work with pressed flowers. It's an archival material, so it's supposed to, not tarnish or color any of the flowers or anything, and it's, supposed to last, God knows how long. So
Yeah.
it's an archival glue
Do
that
you
is used for preserve.
do you do one side of the flower or do you do the whole flower?
You do the whole flower.
You do the
Sometimes
whole
in some of
flower.
the very thick flowers, you can cut half of them off just because it's just so much bulk and so much moisture. So you can like
Yeah,
cut some of the flowers in half, or peel some of the petals out, just kind of make them more flat.
interesting. And in your studio, do you have a favorite tool that you like to use?
I love my puncture needles that I keep sharpening, that I keep stabbing the paper with.
How do you sharpen the needle?
I have like this Japanese sharpening block, like this kind of, it's
Wow.
like a,
Like
it's
a
a stone.
stone, like a
It's a
sharpening stone.
stone. Yeah. And
That's
then you just
great.
have to, because you puncture so much. It's like, I'm kind of like a sewing machine. So I'm like, and so every few minutes it kind of gets dull. So you sharpen it. And, I have a number of different thicknesses of these needles. And yeah, it's kind of a fun process. It's kind of meditative. And I like the sound of it too. It's kind of like flamenco or something. It's
Mm.
like, yeah.
Um, I tell a joke in each one of my podcasts.
Okay.
The joke's always delivered from Max the X, and we try to keep this thing on theme, and we'll see how we do with this one. So here's the joke. Why were the Dark Ages so dark?
Gosh, I'm not gonna even try.
Okay,
Why? Why were they so dark?
because there were so many nights.
That's hilarious. I'm gonna have to remember that. I'm
That's
gonna
like a
tell it to my
yeah,
daughter tomorrow.
yeah,
The thing is, I
exactly.
forget all jokes. I try to think about them and I forget them like immediately, but I think I remember.
Yeah, the
That's
Dark
funny.
Ages were dark.
That's
Anyway,
a dad joke.
that's a dad joke. Yes. Okay, so
Yeah.
it could be a mom joke tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you brought up this quote by Rumi,
Mm-hmm.
the one that the
The
wound
wound
is
is
a
where the light.
place where the light enters, right?
Yeah.
Well, so that's interesting. So you had also mentioned that in an article, and I saw that, and I'm like, oh, this is great. I think that's a great quote. Well, my daughter Vanya she has a friend, a good friend, and her friend's name is Rumi, and Rumi's
Cool.
16, and so I told her about that quote. And then I told her that I'm doing a podcast about darkness. And I said, hey, Rumi, can you give me a quote? And so she thought about it. And then she said, Eric, I've got a quote for you. And it is this: I'd rather spend time in darkness and feel a little lost than be perfectly polished and perpetually sunny.
Yeah. No, I
It's pretty
agree with that.
nice,
That's
right? She has perspective and insight. And anyway, um,
yeah.
thanks to Rumi, and also thanks to Rumi, both of them, for their great quotes.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
we have
awesome.
yet another P in our pod. So this one, we talk about audio, we talk about music, and I change hats for this. So let me just
Okay.
unplug my headphones for a second, get my hat. This is Audio Alchemy, and I'm just curious if there's any quote dark and disturbing music that has influenced you in the past.
I grew up like listening to Prodigy and Rage Against the Machine and Nirvana. Um, for me, I guess for my parents, that was like dark music, right?
What was it about? Because Rage Against the Machine, just in their name,
Yeah.
I think I would say it dark, but it's sort of, it doesn't stem from the aesthetic of dark, but rather this sort of
No, but it's kind
this
of
intense anger and
it's kind
like
of fuck you to the
it,
establishment, to
exact.
control. And I've always been like, I just hate authority. I'm like, just, I need my freedom. Like, I don't do well with rules or restrictions or things like that. So I think it's just, when I heard that as a teenager, it just really resonated with me. Like, fuck you. I
Yeah.
won't do what you tell me.
I mean, they've always been extremely political. And
Yeah.
in that sense, they're real artists, right? Because like we were talking about earlier in the podcast, like if an artist should be able to say something and it should be unfiltered and they should be able
Yeah.
to, they should be able to push on the establishment and like try to make change. And
Yeah.
I feel like they did that. They did that
A long time ago
more than most
already.
bands,
Yeah.
more than most bands back in the day.
They're still doing it, aren't they? I feel like I just recently saw something. Maybe it was
Oh,
just
that's a good
playback of
question.
them. Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
question. I mean, I hope they are. I hope they're still
yeah,
pushing their. I remember. Okay, I got to work backwards now. It was the Republican National Convention, and they showed up, and they were 2008. I think 2008. It was the Republican National Convention, and that was during all the Guantanamo Bay stuff. Do you remember? And
yeah,
all the protests
yeah,
going on, and they showed up on stage with they showed up with the Guantanamo outfits, and then they had the bags over their head. They were like their heads were all covered, and they showed up on stage like that. It was just really powerful. I do think they're artists using the medium of music to convey that message. But
yeah. I mean, like Pussy Riot is super
yeah,
famous for doing
exactly.
that, you know,
Yeah,
and to,
yep.
you know,
That's another one. Yeah,
endangering their lives, right? Like, you know,
that's a great one actually.
yeah.
I had a lot. I was originally gonna say Nick Cave's Murder
Oh, I
Ballads.
love Nick Cave. Yeah, I love him.
I mean, that
Such
was
good stuff.
that. I mean, as a young kid, that really I was like, wow, it's so dark and
And his voice
disturbing,
is so
but I
amazing.
have to keep listening to it.
Yeah,
Um,
no, he's amazing for sure.
I was thinking about him, but when you mentioned Rage Against the Machine and like sort of that political stance, I mean, he was
Yeah,
his was very much about death and murder, and it was dark in that way. But
yeah,
from a
yeah.
political perspective, I really like Billie Holiday's "Strange Fruit."
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's such a beautiful song.
You know, like it's like it's a classic, and I feel like
100%.
that. I feel like that's a song everyone should. It should be taught in schools.
And wasn't it was banned, no? It was banned for
Yeah,
years and
it
years,
was.
right?
It,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there was. I mean, it was very political. I always felt like she was singing a funeral, like it was
Yeah.
a sung funeral in a way for everyone that
Yeah.
lost their lives in the South
Yeah.
from hanging. Anyway, the listening to the music is so. I don't know. My skin crawls. I get goosebumps every time I listen to
Yeah.
it. That
Voice
one's
is so
always,
powerful.
and her voice is
Yeah.
great. I think there was.
For sure.
I think God, I can't remember the story. There was a story that she would like have all the lights dimmed. She would only sing the song once, and something with the audience, like they had to do something like a complete silence. Like she really staged it in a way that made it really feel really powerful. I can't remember the story completely, but
Yeah.
I always thought she really did a great job and a great service with that song. So
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy,
yeah,
sad stories.
all
Very
right.
dark.
Let's try to end on a lighter note. No,
Yeah.
it's important.
No, for
If
sure.
anyone hasn't heard Range Fruit, please listen to it because it's
Absolutely.
all a very important message.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure as well. It's been fun.
I love your work and I can't wait to see more of it.
Thank you so much.
That was fantastic. Great interview. Loved it. We have the lights back on, and that means we have reached the beginning of the end. Now, I started with the story of the Dark Nun, and I want to end with another dark story. This one is about the dark side of counterfeit painting, and it starts in the Notre Gallery. It was one of the oldest and most prestigious galleries in all of America. And in 1994, an obscure art dealer came in and had a proposal. The proposal was to sell some unseen pieces of art from the abstract expressionist masters. They were art collected by a very private owner, and the owner claimed to have purchased them directly from the artists. And they were held private and never seen to the public, but now he wanted to offload them. And that was a very intriguing story to the gallery. And so they jumped at the idea and they're like, yes, let's do this. And so over 17 years, they did exactly that. They sold some 50 counterfeit paintings. They were selling Pollocks, Rothkos, de Koonings, Kleins, a couple others, and it was very good business. They sold them for $80 million. Now, that's a lot of money. The paintings themselves, they were not done in some London underground. No, they were done in a garage, in a small garage in Queens. Yep, in Queens. And they were painted by one person. All those different types of art pieces were done by a very talented Chinese immigrant. His name was Pei Shun Chan, and he was paid about $1,000 to $4,000 per painting, which is just nothing compared to the fact that they were selling for millions of dollars. Now, if you go back to the beginning, to me, the alarm bell should have been going off right away when that first painting came in. There was an unknown painting. There was an anonymous owner. They requested a quiet sale. They had no paper trail. And the artist had passed away, and so they couldn't authenticate it. Like all those things were red flags, like alarm bells, boop, boop. However, those didn't go off. And I feel like they didn't go off for two reasons. The first is the art dealer is very smart. She started very slow. She started with very humble beginnings. She walked in with her first piece. It was a piece of paper, and on that paper was a Rothko. And so that was a very easy way to get into the relationship. And once that relationship was established with a prestigious gallery, it just kept going. Now, the other reason why I think it worked, and this reason's probably more important, is that every single person who came in contact with this story wanted it to be true. It's very romantic. It's incredible to find a piece of art by a master that everyone loves that's never been seen before. And that gets people talking. It gets their juices flowing. And so the people who were checking to see if the artwork was counterfeit or not, they wanted to believe that it was a Rothko. They wanted to believe that it was a Pollock. And so it was. And that went on, again, as I said, that went on for 17 years. And people wanted to see what they wanted to see. And finally, in 2011, the walls came tumbling down. The art dealer was exposed and arrested. The gallery was forced to shut their doors abruptly. And the Chinese immigrant, he snuck away to China. Maybe that was some retribution for him not being paid much. I don't know. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. If you want more dark content, we've got it. We have a newsletter over on Substack, so you can check that out. We got a ring too if you want to call us at 646-580-0450. You can also text if you want to do that. I'd love to hear from you. That is it. Until you click in again, remember, art can fool the eye, stories can fool the mind, so make sure you always ask lots and lots of questions. I am out of here. I have, what is this? I got some, Girl Scout cookies. Some more flavored. Wow, some more flavored Girl Scout cookies. What? Pretty tasty. I'm going to put two in my mouth. Oh, okay. Oh, so good. I'll see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.